The arena was built to make gods look small. Black alloy walls stretched upward into artificial sky, layered with gravitic projectors and containment fields strong enough to cage a collapsing star. 50,000 alien citizens filled the tiers in a spiral of polished bone-white stone. Their voices merged into a single sound, mockery. At the center of the arena knelt a creature that once ended wars by existing. For 2,000 years, it had not roared. Not because it forgot how. Because they made sure it couldn't. Massive restraint pylons pierced the arena floor, feeding shimmering chains of hard light into the creature's body. Neural dampeners glowed along its spine. Metallic implants traced the ridges of its skull. A lattice of inhibitors pulsed faintly beneath dark scales that had long ago dulled from crimson to ash. Its wings, if they could still be called wings, were folded tight, reinforced with surgical bracing that limited their span. Its tail rested motionless. Its claws dug slightly into the arena stone, not in rage. In silence. 1,000 meters above, suspended in a throne of hovering obsidian, the alien Empress rose. Her armor shimmered like liquid starlight. A crown of segmented crystal hovered behind her head, refracting the arena lights into a halo of authority. She extended one elegant, clawed hand toward the creature below. Behold, her amplified voice rang through the stadium, cold and precise. The last of the Devourers. A ripple of theatrical gasps. Once they hunted entire systems. Once they believed themselves apex sovereigns. Her eyes narrowed slightly. But evolution favors intelligence over instinct. The crowd erupted in applause. The dragon did not move. It has been rendered, she continued, defective. The word echoed longer than it should have. High above the arena floor, inside a reinforced maintenance corridor overlooking the spectacle, a human stood alone among the hum of machinery. His name was Elias Ward. Officially, he was contracted as a systems mechanic, maintenance and calibration specialist for containment infrastructure. He wore a grease-stained gray utility jacket with the imperial insignia stitched reluctantly over one shoulder. His hands were scarred from plasma welders and microfusion repairs. He wasn't there for the speech. He was there because something in the containment grid readings had been off for weeks. Below him, the Empress gestured again. A holoscreen flared to life, displaying historical footage. Devourer dragons blotting out suns. Entire fleets burning in coordinated spirals of plasma. Planets cracked open by gravitational shockwaves from synchronized wing beats. They were uncontrollable, the Empress said calmly. So we corrected them. The footage shifted. Surgical diagrams. Genetic sequencing overlays. Neural suppressor schematics. They were neutered. More applause. Elias frowned. His eyes weren't on the dragon. They were on the energy flux lines surrounding it. The restraint pylons fed a continuous dampening signal into the creature's nervous system. But beneath the surface, something else flickered, anomalous surges that shouldn't have been possible in a fully suppressed organism. The dragon's head shifted slightly. Barely noticeable. The crowd didn't react. But Elias did. He leaned closer to the transparent observation panel, pulling up a handheld scanner. Energy readings scrolled across the display in rapid columns of alien script. Neural inhibition, active. Hormonal suppression, active. Muscle fiber restriction, active. Yet the core energy signature. It wasn't diminished. It was being redirected. The Empress's voice sharpened. Let this relic serve as a reminder. Even the fiercest predator becomes obsolete under enlightened rule. A group of noble spectators laughed loudly in one of the lower balconies. Someone threw a ceremonial banner onto the arena floor near the dragon's claws. It didn't react. Didn't even blink. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. 2,000 years. 2,000 years of forced suppression. His scanner beeped softly. He adjusted the filters. There. A spike. Minute. Controlled. Hidden beneath the baseline suppression frequency. The dragon's eye, its left one, tilted slightly upward. Not toward the Empress. Toward the maintenance corridor. Toward him. Elias froze. The distance between them was immense. Shielded. Encrypted. Monitored. There was no possible way. The eye ignited faintly. Not with flame. With awareness. Not rage. Not madness. Awareness. Elias swallowed. The Empress concluded her address with finality. Let history remember, power without discipline is nothing. The crowd stood in ovation. The dragon remained kneeling. But as Elias zoomed his scanner into the restraint interface embedded along the creature's spine, he saw something no one else in the arena could. The neural dampeners weren't just suppressing aggression. They were rerouting something far more complex. Coordination pathways. Cognitive amplification nodes. Strategic neural clusters. They hadn't neutered a beast. They had lobotomized a general. Elias exhaled slowly. Below, the dragon's gaze never left him. And in that single unblinking stare, Elias understood something that made his pulse quicken. The creature wasn't broken. It wasn't defeated. It wasn't defective. It was waiting. The containment grid hummed louder for a brief second, almost as if responding to the unspoken tension. Elias lowered his scanner. 2,000 years, he muttered under his breath. The dragon's eye dimmed slightly, but did not close. In the arena, the Empress turned to leave amid thunderous applause. Above them all, unnoticed by 50,000 citizens and an empire drunk on its own narrative, a human mechanic began asking the wrong questions. And for the first time in 2 millennia, the dragon had been seen. The anomaly wasn't a glitch. Elias checked 3 times. Then he checked again. The arena had emptied hours ago. The thunder of applause had faded into distant corridor echoes. Imperial banners were being lowered. The Empress had returned to her floating palace tower. But deep inside the maintenance sector beneath the arena floor, the containment core still hummed. Elias stood before a curved wall of projection glass, data cascading in pale blue streams across its surface. The dragon's neural dampening array pulsed rhythmically in the center display, an elegant cage made of mathematics. Official diagnosis, total behavioral neutralization. Reality? He magnified the waveform. Every suppression cycle siphoned energy from the dragon's core nervous system, but instead of dissipating it, the system rerouted it through an external buffer. He isolated the output channel. His brows furrowed. That's not suppression, he muttered. It was storage. 2,000 years of redirected output. 2,000 years of contained power. Behind him, heavy alloy doors hissed open. Human ward. Elias didn't turn immediately. He recognized the voice, Prefect Zaleth, Imperial Science Division. Tall. Slender. Gray exoskeletal ridges along the jawline. Eyes like polished amber. I filed a systems irregularity report, Elias said calmly. Containment Grid 7B is misclassifying energy transfer. Zaleth stepped closer, talons clicking lightly against the floor. There is no irregularity. There is, Elias replied. The dragon's inhibitors aren't reducing neural output. They are channeling it. That is intentional. Elias turned now. Why? The prefect's gaze sharpened. The devourers were not merely predators. They were tacticians. Coordinated. Adaptive. We removed their capacity for strategic thought. You didn't remove it, Elias said quietly. You bottlenecked it. Silence. Zaleth's eyes narrowed slightly. Your contract is mechanical. Not philosophical. My contract is to maintain structural integrity, Elias replied. And if you're storing 2 millennia of compressed neural discharge beneath the arena floor, that's a structural concern. The prefect stepped closer until they were nearly eye to eye. The creature is defective. That's not what the data says. A long pause. Then, softly. Careful, human. The doors hissed shut behind Zaleth as he left. Elias stared back at the projection wall. Defective. That word again. He reactivated the live neural feed. Down below, in the containment chamber beneath the arena floor, the dragon lay restrained in its private holding vault. Massive metallic arches pinned its wings. The spinal interface glowed faintly along its back. He zoomed in on its cranial readouts. Cognitive suppression index, 98.7%. That remaining 1.3% flickered irregularly. Adaptive spikes. Memory retention markers. Pattern recognition. It was still thinking. Slowly. Patiently. Elias tapped his wrist console and pulled up historical archives. Devourer war logs, classified. He bypassed the lock using his maintenance clearance, limited access only. Battle simulations appeared. Dragons coordinating across light years without communication lag. Predicting fleet movements before they occurred. Anticipating gravitational shifts in combat zones. They weren't beasts. They were war commanders with wings. And the Empire had decided that was unacceptable. Elias leaned back in his chair. If I reduce one limiter, he murmured. Just one. Not enough to trigger alarms. Not enough to free it. Just enough to test the theory. He opened the suppression lattice interface. Limiter node 47A, peripheral motor dampener. It controlled micromuscular tension in the cervical spine. Non-lethal. Non-combat critical. He rerouted 0.02% of its suppression feed. Barely noticeable. The system hesitated. Warning lights flickered briefly. Then stabilized. Containment integrity, nominal. Elias exhaled. Down below, in the vault. The dragon's head shifted. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just, freely. For the first time in 2,000 years, its neck rotated without resistance. The movement was subtle. But deliberate. Its massive eye opened slowly. And this time, there was no dullness behind it. The pupil narrowed. Focused. Elias felt it again. That awareness. Not confusion. Not rage. Recognition. You can feel it, can't you? He whispered to the screen. The dragon's breathing deepened slightly. Energy readings climbed, not in chaotic spikes, but in structured waves. Organized. Controlled. Elias swallowed. You're not defective. The containment system pinged softly. Minor neural fluctuation detected. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing alarming. Yet. Then the dragon did something that made Elias's pulse spike. It looked directly at the nearest surveillance lens. Held the gaze. And deliberately closed its eye. Elias froze. That wasn't instinct. That was communication. A slow blink. Measured. Intentional. The system registered a slight power redistribution across the dragon's cognitive cortex. Adaptive synchronization. It was recalibrating. Learning its own limits again. Elias leaned forward, heart pounding. 2,000 years of suppression. And it was already adapting in minutes. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Imperial command notification. Zalatha's voice transmitted coldly through the speakers. Human ward. Cease all unauthorized adjustments immediately. Elias didn't respond. His eyes remained locked on the screen. Because beneath the spinal interface, the energy buffer that had been storing neural discharge for centuries, had begun to vibrate. Not dangerously. Not explosively. But steadily. Like something waking from an impossibly long sleep. Elias whispered to himself, barely audible. They didn't new to you. On the screen, the dragon's eye opened again. Fully. And this time, it burned. The vibration wasn't random. Elias replayed the data 3 times, slowing the waveform to microscopic intervals. The energy buffer beneath the spinal dampeners wasn't destabilizing, it was synchronizing. Every limiter the Empire had installed fed into a central reservoir buried beneath the arena vault. 2,000 years of redirected cognition. Compressed instinct. Strategic impulse. Not erased. Stored. He accessed deeper archives, sealed Imperial records flagged under Devourer containment doctrine. Access denied. He overrode it. Access conditionally granted. A wall of old war footage flooded his screen. The Devourers weren't just powerful. They were coordinated in ways the Empire never publicly admitted. Dragons moved in formation across starfields like living constellations. They didn't attack blindly, they calculated gravitational vectors, enemy supply arcs, psychological pressure points. One classified memo froze him. Primary threat is not physical superiority. Primary threat is cooperative intelligence. Elias leaned back slowly. They feared you, he murmured. Another document surfaced, Imperial Genetic Intervention Protocol. The so-called neutering. It hadn't targeted reproductive capacity. It targeted neural architecture. Strategic clustering nodes. Collective synchronization pathways. They didn't weaken the species. They severed its ability to think together. A species of generals turned into ceremonial pets. Below him, in the containment vault, the dragon shifted again. More smoothly now. Its breathing had changed, no longer shallow suppression cycles, but deep, measured draws of air. Controlled. The energy reservoir beneath its spine pulsed brighter. Not chaotic. Organized. Elias pulled up a thermal scan. The dragon's brain activity, still heavily dampened, was reorganizing around the newly restored pathway he'd adjusted. It was compensating. Learning. Faster than any organic mind should. A cold realization crawled up his spine. 2,000 years of stored neural discharge. That wasn't just power. That was memory. Patterns. Simulations. Battle experience. All compressed into a silent archive beneath its skin. A sudden alert flashed red across his console. Unauthorized archive access detected. He cursed under his breath. Footsteps echoed in the corridor behind him, multiple sets this time. Not the measured pace of a scientist. Armor. Military. The doors slid open. Prefect Zaleth entered, flanked by 2 Imperial Guard officers clad in matte black exosuits. You accessed restricted war archives, Zaleth said calmly. Elias didn't turn. You cut their minds apart. Silence filled the room. The prefect's tone sharpened slightly. We prevented extinction. You prevented competition, Elias corrected. One of the guards stepped forward. You will disengage from the containment interface immediately. Elias slowly turned to face them. You're sitting on a reservoir of 2,000 years of compressed cognitive output, he said evenly. If that buffer destabilizes, the arena floor won't hold. Zaleth's eyes flicked briefly to the data display. He saw it. The vibration. Small. But growing. You altered a limiter, the prefect said. Barely, Elias replied. And look how quickly it adapted. As if summoned by the statement. A low tremor rolled through the containment vault. Not explosive. Resonant. The dragon rose. Not fully. But higher than before. Its forelimbs pressed against the floor with deliberate strength. The restraint pylons flared brighter, compensating automatically. Energy spikes rippled across Elias's screen. Still within containment tolerance. But climbing. In the vault, the dragon turned its head slowly toward the reinforced blast door leading upward, to the arena floor above. Toward the throne platform. Zaleth's composure cracked for half a second. Return all limiters to maximum, he ordered. Elias hesitated. The guards raised their weapons. Below them. The dragon's eye lifted toward the surveillance array. Toward Elias. There was no confusion in it. No feral rage. Only calculation. And something else. Expectation. Elias swallowed. They weren't mindless predators, he said quietly. They were sovereign. Another tremor shook the floor, stronger now. The spinal buffer glowed brighter beneath the dragon's scales, lines of suppressed energy tracing along its body like veins igniting. The containment grid compensated again. Straining. Zaleth stepped closer, voice now edged with urgency. You do not understand what you are provoking. Elias looked back at the data. I understand exactly. He tapped into the suppression lattice once more. The final cognitive limiter node hovered before him. Strategic pathway clamp, primary. Locked behind triple authorization. 2,000 years of forced silence. 2,000 years of strategic thought compressed beneath an artificial leash. Below, the dragon's massive claws flexed against the arena floor. Not wildly. Testing pressure. Measuring resistance. The pylons hummed louder. Hairline fractures began forming in the stone around their bases. Zaleth's voice hardened. If that node disengages, it will not stop at the throne. Elias's eyes never left the screen. Maybe it won't need to. In the vault. The dragon inhaled deeply. The sound alone shook dust from the ceiling. The guards shifted uneasily. For the first time in 2 millennia. The creature did not look subdued. It looked restrained. And restraint, Elias realized, was not the same as weakness. The energy buffer pulsed again. Faster. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. And far below, ancient chains that had never once faltered, began to hum. Not with failure. With resistance. The hum became a roar. Not from the dragon. From the containment grid. Warning sigils flared crimson across every display in the maintenance chamber. Suppression threshold exceeded. Energy buffer overcapacity. Elias didn't flinch. He was already inside the primary clamp interface. Behind him, Imperial guards aimed steady plasma rifles at his back. Disengage from the system, one barked. Below them, the dragon slowly rose to its full height. 2,000 years of forced submission uncoiled in a single, deliberate motion. Massive wings strained against metallic bracing. The spinal implants blazed white-hot. Hard light chains thickened, trying to compensate. The arena vault trembled. High above, in her obsidian throne chamber, the Empress felt the shift. What is happening? She demanded. Prefect Zaleth's voice answered through her console, tight with urgency. The human has compromised the cognitive clamp. The Empress stood. Deploy shock suppression. Maximum. Back in the maintenance chamber, Elias watched the energy graph spike violently as emergency dampeners fired. The dragon convulsed. Then stabilized. It didn't thrash. It didn't rage. It absorbed the shock. Its breathing slowed. Adapted. That's impossible, one guard whispered. The dragon's eye opened fully. Brighter than before. Not wild. Focused. Elias exhaled. They stored 2,000 years of its mind, he murmured. You think it didn't learn inside that cage? The floor beneath the pylons cracked. Thin fractures spidered outward in glowing lines. The dragon flexed one forelimb. Stone shattered. Not explosively. Precisely. Containment pylons shrieked under strain. Zalatha's voice cut through the chamber speakers. Human ward, you are committing treason against the Empire. Elias didn't respond. His finger hovered over the final authorization lock. Strategic pathway clamp, primary. Triple sealed. He bypassed the first encryption layer. Then the second. The guard stepped closer. You will stand down. Below. The dragon turned. Not toward the crowd above. Not toward the exits. It rotated slowly, massive head angling upward. Toward the throne platform suspended over the arena floor. The Empress had arrived. She hovered above the chaos, armor radiant, gaze cold. For the first time since her reign began. Her expression held uncertainty. The dragon locked eyes with her. And did not kneel. Finish it, Elias whispered. He overrode the final clamp. For one heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then. The spinal implants detonated outward in a shower of molten fragments. Not from overload. From internal force. A shockwave rippled through the vault. Hard light chains flickered. Shattered. The dragon rose fully upright. Wings expanded in a thunderous arc, tearing free of their bracing. The sound was not a roar. It was a declaration. A deep, resonant vibration that rolled through the entire arena structure and into the bones of every living being inside it. Above, spectators screamed. Guards scrambled. The Empress raised her hand. Fire. Turret batteries along the arena walls powered up. Then froze. Every system flickered. Navigation feeds glitched. Weapon locks failed. Elias stared at the diagnostics. The dragon wasn't attacking. It was interfacing. The stored cognitive reservoir had just been released. And it was synchronizing with the arena grid. Reclaiming control. 2,000 years of forced observation. Learning the Empire's infrastructure. Mapping its architecture. The dragon stepped forward. Each footfall cracked reinforced stone. It didn't lunge. Didn't incinerate the stands. It advanced slowly toward the throne. Measured. Deliberate. The Empress hovered in place, refusing to retreat. You were corrected, she said coldly. You were made manageable. The dragon's massive head lowered slightly, until its eye was level with her platform. Silence fell over the arena. Even the alarms quieted. The creature inhaled. Flames flickered faintly between its teeth. Then faded. It did not attack. Instead, it turned. Not toward the Empress. Toward the maintenance corridor. Toward Elias. Every gaze in the arena followed. The dragon lowered its massive head. Slowly. Deliberately. And bowed. The guards in the chamber froze. Elias stood motionless. He hadn't freed a monster. He had restored a sovereign mind. The Empress's voice trembled, barely perceptible. It will obey you? Elias shook his head slowly. No. Below them, the dragon straightened. Its wings folded, not submissively, but with contained power. It faced the throne again. Not as a beast. Not as a weapon. As an equal. And in that silent standoff, the Empire realized something far more dangerous than rage had awakened. Control. Not theirs. The arena lights flickered one final time. Then stabilized. Under new command. The dragon's voice, when it finally echoed across the chamber, was deep and ancient. And perfectly articulate. We were never defective. The Empress did not answer. Because for the first time in 2,000 years, she was no longer the apex presence in the arena. Silence ruled the arena. Not fear. Not chaos. Silence. 50,000 witnesses stood frozen beneath fractured containment pylons and flickering banners, staring at the being they had mocked moments before. The dragon's wings were no longer straining against chains. They were folded with deliberate control. Its gaze rested on the Empress. Not hostile. Not submissive. Equal. Imperial Guard units surrounded the arena floor, weapons charged but trembling in uncertain hands. The throne platform hovered in place, its gravitic stabilizers humming faintly. The Empress spoke first. You would burn my capital, she said, her voice steady by sheer force of will. The dragon's reply resonated across every speaker, bypassing standard channels. I would not. The words were deep, ancient, unmistakably controlled. The crowd gasped. 2,000 years of forced silence. And its first declaration was restraint. Elias stepped forward into the open corridor balcony, now fully visible to the arena below. All eyes shifted again. The dragon did not look at him for guidance. It did not wait for command. It simply acknowledged him. The Empress's gaze hardened. "You altered what we secured," she said to Elias. "You destabilized the balance of this empire." Elias met her eyes without flinching. "No," he replied calmly. "You destabilized it 2,000 years ago." Murmurs rippled through the arena. The dragon stepped forward again, slow, controlled, every movement calculated to avoid civilian casualties. Its claws pressed into the stone with precision, avoiding structural weak points. It wasn't rampaging. It was navigating. The Empress raised her hand once more, but this time, no weapons activated. Because the dragon already held the grid. Containment towers glowed under its influence. Arena systems answered to its recalibrated signal. It had learned the Empire's architecture while imprisoned. It understood their infrastructure better than they did. The Empress lowered her hand slowly. "You would overthrow us." The dragon's eye narrowed slightly. "We would end correction." The word echoed heavily. Across the arena, diplomatic representatives from other subjugated systems watched in stunned silence. For centuries, rumors had spread. Species that once resisted the Empire had quietly disappeared from military prominence. Strategic thinkers removed. Leaders reconditioned. Entire cultures made manageable. Now the truth stood in the open. The dragon turned slightly, scanning the arena tiers. "You altered not only us," it said. The Empress did not deny it. Elias felt the weight of history settling over the moment. "You feared cooperation," he said quietly. The dragon's gaze flicked briefly toward him in acknowledgement. "Yes." The Empress straightened her posture, defiant even now. "The Devourers nearly fractured galactic order." "We nearly challenged your monopoly," the dragon corrected. A tremor passed through the arena, not structural this time, but societal. Guards lowered their weapons one by one. Not out of fear. Out of uncertainty. The dragon spread its wings, not in threat, but in display. Scales that had dulled under centuries of suppression now shimmered faintly with restored internal energy. The spinal glow stabilized into a steady pulse. 2,000 years of stored cognition now flowed freely, but calmly. No explosion. No vengeance. Only clarity. The Empress studied the creature carefully. "You have power," she said. "If you do not seek domination, then what do you seek?" The dragon's voice softened slightly, but carried undeniable authority. "Choice." One word. Heavier than any threat. Elias stepped closer to the balcony edge. "Reform," he added. "Or collapse." The Empress looked around the arena. Her citizens. Her generals. Her scientists. Every one of them had just witnessed the Empire's greatest symbol of control stand up, and choose not to destroy. That choice was more dangerous than fire. The dragon stepped back slightly, creating space. A gesture. Not conquest. Negotiation. The Empress inhaled slowly. "You would align with humanity?" The dragon did not hesitate. "Yes." The word struck harder than any blast. The first alliance in 2,000 years not forged through fear. Elias felt the moment settle into permanence. The dragon had not bowed to him. It had recognized him. The difference changed everything. Above them, orbital defense platforms began transmitting status updates. Across Imperial space, containment facilities housing other corrected species flickered under remote override pings. The dragon's restored neural network was reaching outward. Not to attack. To awaken. Small pulses. Gentle disruptions. Questions. The Empress closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, something had shifted. "You have made your point," she said. "No," the dragon replied calmly. "We have made ours." A long pause followed. Then, slowly, the Empress descended from her throne platform. For the first time in her reign, she stood on the arena floor. On the same level. "You will have representation," she said quietly. "You will have autonomy." The dragon studied her carefully. "Correction ends," it replied. "Yes." The arena exhaled as one. No war. No annihilation. No burning skies. Just an empire forced to confront its own history. Elias felt the containment system stabilize fully around him, no longer suppressing, but integrating. The dragon folded its wings completely. Power contained. By choice. As emergency crews cautiously entered the arena to repair damage, the dragon turned once more toward Elias. You saw us, it said. Elias nodded. You were never defective. A faint rumble vibrated through the dragon's chest, something like quiet satisfaction. Around them, banners bearing imperial dominance symbols slowly lowered. Not torn down. Replaced. Rewritten. Across the galaxy, historians would mark this moment not as a rebellion, but as a restoration. For 2,000 years, they had called the dragon defective. Humanity called it unfinished.